Hey guys, welcome to another video from Overbite Gaming, and today I want to have a little bit of a talk about It Came From the Desert. Pretty old game, 1989. It was first released on the Amiga, which is the platform I initially got it on. It is also the version you're seeing here, albeit run through Steam on the Cinemaware Anthology, which has a whole host of Cinemaware games on it, which is really nice. And there's some corkers on there like Defender of the Crown, SDI, The King of Chicago, Lords of the Rising Sun, and the follow-up, the sequel to It Came From the Desert. So what is It Came From the Desert? It's very much a love letter to 1950s monster movies, specifically them, I would say, because your antagonists are giant ants, and just like in them, you need to shoot the old antennas off until you get access to heavier artillery later on. So it begins with you assuming the role of Dr. Greg Bradley, who is in a remote Californian town called Lizard's Breath, and strange things start occurring. There's a cow that gets its head cut off, people go missing, there's murders, there's strange substances and like impressions in the ground that turn up, and as you investigate you discover, shock horror, radiation mutated giant ants. And I did have the option of playing the DOS version, because that is also included in the anthology. From the blurb I've read online, the only differences are palette changes, but for me the DOS version looks absolute bobbins compared to the Amiga version, although the Amiga version does run pretty slowly, even in the Cinemaware Anthology sort of semi-quasi-emulated form. So you can see there's pauses between you picking a dialogue option and it coming to fruition, stuff like that. The game itself is actually very varied. There's a lot of different things you can do, from first person shooting at the old ants, trying to blow their antennas off with revolvers, which has limited ammo, and if you mess it up then you end up in the hospital wasting time, because you only have a set amount of days to destroy the queen ant and stop them from mating and spreading across the world. Ooh, high stakes indeed. You also have little mini sort of games, if I could call them that, like when you're in a hospital you can either accept treatment or you can try and escape. Obviously if you just manage to escape, which I've never done, I always get chased down by the bloody nurses and doctors and jabbed with a needle and get taken back to my room and strapped onto the bed, and normally that's something I'd like a nurse to do, but not in this one. Not when the world's at stake from being overrun by giant mutated ants. It seems like it's a bad idea to lose any time at all. You can also have nice fights with the nice fights. Who has a nice fight? Oh my god. You have knife fights with the local greasers. They charge you down, you play chicken with them. So there's a lot going on, and as the game opens up and the sort of government acknowledges that, oh yeah, these ants, they're a problem, you get access to dynamite, and you have an overhead view as you throw them at giant ants, and there's a lot more ants, but obviously you have dynamite, so a bit easier to take them out. One good pop on the back and they're done and squished. It's not easy to hit them though. It's also not easy to shoot the antennas off, because when you aim the gun there's no real sight. You just see sort of where the gun's pointing and try and gauge it like that, but you don't actually aim along it. So normally it's higher than you think it would be. And you also get access to things like the National Guard base, which is nearby, so you get access to their tanks and aircraft later on as well, which really comes in handy obviously for putting the ants down. It's always better to be in a tank when being attacked by a mutated giant ant, I find. That's just me though. I mean, you may want to just like bop it in the face, which I'm sure will go well for nobody. Interestingly enough, they did actually make a movie based on the game, which is astounding. I kind of think I've seen it, but I'm not entirely sure. I've seen a movie with giant ants in, but I'm not sure if it was this specific one. I've watched the trailer and I'm like, I'm not sure. But outside of not being set back in the day, in the 50s, it's very much giant mutant ants that look quite similar to the ones found in the game. So if you want, there it is. The Cinemaware Anthology itself is still on sale on Steam, excuse me, and can be picked up for £7.99 new pence. So it's not particularly expensive, and it comes with a fair few old games. Some crackers on there, as I said before. I did have SDI back in the day. I was never very good at it though, I didn't get very far. I think I was on Spectrum, I had that, and I had It Came From the Desert and Ant Heads as a double pack on the PC. I think I bought it for my mum at the time, but I ended up playing it more, I suspect. Kind of a bowling ball with Homer on it situation, one thinks. Although I can't remember. I could have done it completely out of misguided, I don't know, just misguidedly thinking she'd like that. Oh, well, it's better than the birthday present she got off my aunt, which was Thief on PC. And she's like, why would you, what? I'm like, she buys me jumpers, man. I think she gets the gifts mixed up. Never mind. That was many moons ago. I've moved on. So It Came From Desert. It does a really good job of actually encapsulating that whole 50s sort of, the feel of 50s movies, when you've got your old prospector out there with his donkey and you go to the university lab and they're obviously able to identify anything because they can, and you know, you have to send stuff away and it comes back in a couple of days, which is not ideal when you've got a 15-day clock, but you really have to sort of get your head around what you're doing and how to do it. There is some element of randomness. So like the ants will turn up and attack you occasionally, and I don't think that's hard-coded. I'm pretty sure that's random because I've played the game quite a bit over the years, but I've never managed to beat it. I've never managed to get that pesky queen ant. I've gotten quite far along, certainly to the point where the town is aware of the threat and is moving against the ants, or the ants are moving against them, depending on how you're doing, I suppose. But yeah, it does. It reminds me a little bit of the Dune game that came out by Virgin, that was on, I think, PC, on CD. I think there was other platforms available, but I remember it was like one of the very first CD-ROM games I got. I think it came in a pack with Seventh Guest as well, so that was quite cool. But in that, you sort of go around and you talk to people, and then sort of halfway through the game, it changes massively to sort of more of a strategy game where you're sort of guiding your Fremen armies against like the Sardaukar and stuff like that. And It Came From the Desert really does do that as well. It's like once it all kicks off, it just feels like a completely different game. It's not a bad thing, because like the game it sort of becomes is still good. It just lacks that whole 50s vibe and becomes more of a game rather than wandering about the town talking to people and picking up evidence, which was honestly for me more enjoyable, as was like the one-on-one encounters with the ants where you've got your pistol. Even though I've done it, I didn't do it in the game footage. I got rants by the ant, but you know, I tried. It's just, as I said, lining up shots with the pistol isn't easy because you don't have, like, you're not looking down it, it's just like below your vision, so it's just pointing upwards and you're trying to sort of gauge where the bullet's going to go. And the ant does move and the antennae aren't large, so it's tricky. So that is a little blast from the past, a little retro review of It Came From the Desert. It's a great game. Really captures the period nicely. It is an old game though, so as I said, you know, you can tell from the graphics it's an old game. I think the DOS one came out about a year later, so but as I said, I don't think it looks anywhere near as good. The palette change is just unsightly to like have any measure of just, oh no. I tried to do the Amiga one and it said use the joystick, and my joystick wouldn't work, so I was like, shit. I tried the DOS one, so I loaded the DOS one, and it was, as soon as the opening came on, I was like, oh god, this looks awful, I'm not using that. So I went back and I managed to remap the keys on the Amiga version, and thank goodness I was able to use the keyboard to do it. I would have preferred the joystick, but needs must. I mean, it's not exactly accurate either way, especially when like that fucking pesto. I was able to remember to grab the wheelchair in the hospital though, because that obviously increases your speeds because you go speeding about in your wheelchair. I was still caught though, still haven't managed to do that. It's very annoying. The sequel, Antheads, you're not known to the town in that when you play a different character. So trying to convince the town about the impending ant invasion is a lot more difficult. And you also get people turning into ants. Yes, that's probably why it's called ant heads, because they have heads of ants on bodies of humans. And it's disturbing. But you still need to shoot their antenna off, so there you go. No, nice carryover. I think it was more of an expansion pack that required the first game to play. So it is kind of a sequel, but it's more of like the next episode. There wasn't too much sort of iteration in the game itself. It was pretty much the same, aside from the human-headed ants. But yeah, I mean, it got very. I mean, the original game was pretty well reviewed. The follow-up not so much, because it didn't do anything different. Although it was fairly cheap because it was just an expansion, and that came out the following year. There was a TurboGrafx 16, but I've not seen that version in action. Apparently it is different from the other versions in both gameplay and presentation, and that came out in 92, so 3 years after it originally launched. Anyway, I'm going to leave it there. That is It Came From the Desert. It's a bit of a blast from the past. I would have been 10 when that came out. Wow. Really? Yeah, really. Bloody yeah. Supposed to save up my pocket money to get that. I don't know. Mum should would appreciate it more. Never mind. Anyway, guys, take it easy. I'll catch you next time.